It was a perfect Sunday afternoon when everything changed. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting an orange glow through the kitchen window as I prepared dinner for my family. My husband, Matt, was out in the living room with our daughter, Amelia, playing their usual Sunday afternoon games. The smell of garlic and rosemary filled the air, and for a moment everything felt normal. Everything felt right. But that perfect moment would shatter in a way I could never have imagined. I'm Emma, and I thought I knew everything about the people closest to me. I had been married to Matt for 6 years, and we had built a life together, full of love and shared memories. Our daughter, Amelia, was the light of our lives, and I had always believed in the strength of our family. But there was one person in my life whom I thought I knew better than anyone, my younger sister, Lily. Lily and I had always been close. Growing up, we shared everything, our secrets, our dreams, our hopes. We were two peas in a pod, inseparable. Even as adults, we stayed close, talking almost every day, sharing our joys and sorrows. She was the fun-loving, spontaneous one, and I was the responsible, grounded older sister. We balanced each other out, or so I thought. But that Sunday evening, as I stirred the sauce on the stove, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Lily. "Can we talk? I need to tell you something." At first, I didn't think much of it. Lily had always been open with me, and she was the first person I turned to when things got tough. We had always been able to talk about anything, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable. But the message felt different. There was an urgency in her words, something I couldn't quite place. I shrugged it off, figuring I'd talk to her after dinner. Matt had always joked that I was too attached to my phone, always checking messages or emails, and tonight, I was determined to focus on family. But then the text came again, this time followed by a call. I glanced at the caller ID and saw it was Lily. I excused myself from the kitchen and stepped into the hallway, hoping to get some peace and quiet. As I answered the phone, I didn't expect what came next. "Emma," Lily's voice trembled, and I immediately felt a chill run down my spine. "I need to tell you something. Something you're not going to want to hear." I felt my heart skip a beat. Something in her tone was wrong, off in a way I couldn't quite explain. "What is it, Lily? What's going on?" She hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "It's Matt," she said, her voice cracking. I don't know how to say this, but I've been seeing him. I've been seeing Matt behind your back." The words hung in the air between us, and for a long moment, I couldn't breathe. "What do you mean?" I whispered, feeling my pulse quicken. "What are you talking about?" Lily sobbed on the other end. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I never thought it would go this far. But I've been in love with him, Emma. I'm so sorry." It felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath me. I stood there, my hand shaking as I gripped the phone, struggling to process the words she had just said. My sister, my own flesh and blood, was telling me that she had been having an affair with my husband, the man I had trusted, loved, and built a life with. I couldn't speak, I couldn't even think. "Emma," Lily's voice was quieter now, almost pleading. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant for this to happen, but I can't hide it anymore. I love him. I love Matt, and I don't know how to stop." The silence stretched between us, and I felt my world begin to unravel. Everything I had known, everything I had built, was being torn apart in an instant. The woman I trusted the most, the one I had always considered my closest friend, had betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. "Why?" was all I could manage to say, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know, Emma," she said softly. "It just happened. And I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it all back." I don't remember much of what happened next. I remember standing there, the phone pressed to my ear, feeling as though the world was spinning around me. I heard Lily crying, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I was frozen, paralyzed by the weight of the betrayal. When I finally hung up, I returned to the kitchen, my legs weak beneath me. I looked at Matt, who was sitting at the table with Amelia, both of them laughing. How could he do this? How could he do this to me? And how could my own sister, become the one person I could never trust again? I didn't know what to do. My mind was a whirl of thoughts, rage, confusion, heartbreak, disbelief. My whole life had been a lie. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about my marriage, was crumbling before my eyes. That night, after putting Amelia to bed, I sat in the living room, staring at the wall. I didn't know what to feel. The betrayal ran too deep for words. How could I confront Matt? How could I face him when I knew he had been lying to me for God knows how long? I knew I needed to talk to him, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed time to process this, to come to terms with the reality of what had happened. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to let Lily, my sister, destroy my family. I had to fight for my marriage. I had to fight for the life I had built. But where did I begin? I didn't sleep that night. The weight of the words Lily had said kept replaying in my head, each one cutting deeper than the last. How could she betray me like that? How could my own sister, someone I had always trusted above all others, become the source of my deepest pain? And what about Matt? The man I had spent years with, the man I had trusted with my heart and soul. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I didn't want to confront either of them, not yet. I wasn't ready to face them and hear the lies they would surely tell me, the excuses they would try to offer. No. I needed time. But the reality of what had happened couldn't be ignored. It was too big, too monstrous, to hide from. I spent the morning in a haze, moving through the motions of daily life with Amelia, trying to appear normal for her. I didn't want her to see the wreckage I was drowning in. She was too young to understand why her mother was so distant, so quiet, so broken. So, I kept up the facade for her sake. But deep inside, the anger was building, and it wasn't something I could ignore for long. I needed to do something. I couldn't let Lily get away with this. I couldn't just sit back and allow her to destroy everything I had worked so hard to build. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was professional too. Our family was built on love, yes, but it was also built on the foundation of trust. And that was gone. But how? How could I make her feel the way I felt? How could I expose the truth without destroying everything I had left? I couldn't just walk away from my marriage and my family. I had to fight back. I had to take back control of my life. The next few days passed in a blur. I went through the motions, attended meetings, ran errands, and pretended everything was fine, but inside, I was building a plan. Every moment, every detail, was carefully thought out. I couldn't afford to make mistakes. I couldn't afford to let my emotions dictate my actions. If I was going to take back my life, I needed to be strategic, calm, and calculated. I began by isolating myself from Lily. I didn't answer her calls, didn't reply to her texts. I couldn't bring myself to face her, not yet. But I knew she wouldn't let it go. She had already apologized, but the damage was done. She wasn't going to walk away unscathed. I knew I had to deal with Matt next. He was the root of all this, the man who had made a vow to love me, to honor me, and had broken it in the worst way possible. But there was something else about Matt I had started to realize. His arrogance. His assumption that he could do whatever he wanted, because he thought I would always forgive him. I was done forgiving him. This time, there would be no more chances. By Thursday evening, I couldn't wait any longer. I had to confront Matt, and I had to do it alone. No distractions, no interruptions. When he walked in the door that evening, the familiar warmth of his smile only made my blood boil. He didn't know what was coming. He didn't know that everything had already started to unravel. "Hey," he said, a little too cheerfully. "How's my favorite girl?" I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I looked at him with an intensity that made him stop in his tracks. There was something different in my eyes now, something that made him falter. "Sit down, Matt," I said, my voice cold. "We need to talk." He hesitated but sat down across from me. "What's going on? You've been avoiding me all week." Don't act like everything is fine, Matt, I said, my voice rising. I know everything. I know about you and Lily. The blood drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I didn't give him a chance to respond. Don't you dare try to lie to me, I continued, my heart pounding in my chest. I heard it from her own mouth, Matt. She told me everything. I'm sorry, he stammered. Emma, I didn't mean for it to happen. You didn't mean for it to happen? I interrupted, standing up now, my fists clenched at my sides. You didn't mean for it to happen? You didn't mean to destroy our marriage, to betray me in the worst way possible? You didn't mean to do any of this? He looked at me, his face full of regret, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. I was weak, he said softly. I didn't think about how it would affect you. I never meant to hurt you. Then why, Matt? I asked, my voice shaking. Why did you do it? I don't know, he whispered, his head in his hands. I've messed everything up. I've lost you, and I don't know how to fix it. I shook my head. It's too late for that, Matt. It's too late for apologies. What's done is done. I couldn't believe the words coming out of my own mouth. This wasn't how I had imagined confronting him. I had imagined a scene of chaos, anger, and shouting. But instead, I felt numb. I felt like I had already grieved. This wasn't just about Matt anymore, it was about my future. I could see the pain in his eyes, but it didn't matter. The damage was done, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I took a deep breath, forcing the tears to stay in check. I'm not going to forgive you, Matt. You've broken something in me that I can't fix, and I'm done pretending that everything is okay. You need to leave. His face crumpled as he stood up, but I didn't look at him. I couldn't. I had to be strong. This wasn't the man I had married anymore. This was someone who had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let him back into my life. As he left the room, I could hear him muttering something, but I didn't listen. I was too focused on the next step, on what I had to do to regain control of my life. I wasn't just going to let this go. I was going to make sure Lily and Matt understood the consequences of their actions. The days following my confrontation with Matt felt like a blur. The words he had spoken, the way he had apologized, none of it mattered. It didn't change anything. What mattered now was taking back control of my life, of my marriage, and my family. I couldn't let the betrayal tear me apart any longer. It was time to act. But it wasn't just Matt who had to answer for what happened. No, it was also Lily, my sister. The one person I had trusted more than anyone. The person who knew my deepest secrets, the person who was supposed to be my ally, had become my worst enemy. And as much as I hated to admit it, it was time for me to deal with her. I spent the next few days gathering my thoughts. I couldn't just confront Lily without a clear plan. She had already destroyed my trust in her, and I wasn't about to let her walk away unscathed. But there was more at stake than just my broken heart. My marriage, my family, those were the things I needed to fight for. The consequences of what they had done weren't just personal. They were professional, too. Lily hadn't just destroyed my trust, she had also jeopardized everything I had worked so hard to build, but I wasn't going to let her win. I would take back everything I had lost, and then some. I started with what I knew best, taking control of the situation. I contacted a lawyer, making sure my rights were protected. It wasn't just about my marriage anymore, it was about securing my future. I couldn't let Matt or Lily walk away with everything. At the same time, I reached out to a few close friends and allies at work. I wasn't going to fight this battle alone. I needed the support of the people who had always had my back. Slowly, I began to put the pieces together, realizing that my next step would be just as important as the last. I wasn't going to let Lily or Matt manipulate me any longer. By Friday afternoon, I had gathered enough strength to confront Lily. I knew I couldn't avoid it forever, and I needed closure. She had betrayed me, and I needed her to face the consequences of her actions. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay, that this was just some phase. It was time for the truth to come out. I called her. She answered on the third ring, her voice tight. Emma, Don't say anything, I interrupted, my voice calm but full of authority. I need you to meet me. Now. She hesitated for a moment, but then agreed. Where? I chose a small cafe downtown, one that was quiet enough for us to talk without being interrupted. I didn't want this to be a public spectacle. I didn't want drama. I wanted the truth. And I wanted her to understand exactly what she had done. When I arrived, Lily was already sitting at a table, her back straight and her eyes focused on her phone. She didn't even look up when I walked in. It wasn't until I sat down across from her that she finally acknowledged me. Her expression was guarded, but I could see the guilt in her eyes. I didn't want it to be like this, she said, her voice soft. I never meant for you to find out. I stared at her, feeling a sickening mix of anger and heartbreak. How long, Lily? I asked, my voice steady despite the rage bubbling inside me. How long has this been going on? She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. It started a few months ago. I didn't mean for it to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I couldn't hold back the bitterness, but you did, Lily. You hurt me. You hurt our family. You went behind my back with Matt, my husband, and for what? What did you think was going to happen? Her voice cracked as she spoke. I never wanted to hurt you, Emma. I was confused. I never thought it would go this far, but it did. And I don't know how to fix it. You can't fix it, I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. You betrayed me in the worst way possible. And I don't know if I can ever forgive you for that. Lily's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out for my hand, but I pulled it away before she could touch me. Please, Emma, she whispered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I couldn't bring myself to say anything. No apology was going to undo the damage she had done. The trust was gone, and the bond we had shared was broken beyond repair. I didn't feel any satisfaction in her apology. In fact, it only made me more angry. Lily was sorry? That was supposed to make it better? I didn't need her apologies. What I needed was a way to fix the mess she had created, to take back the power she had stolen from me. I walked away from that meeting with one thing in mind, to take control of my life, to ensure that Lily and Matt couldn't destroy everything I had worked for. They thought they could have everything, that they could take what was mine and walk away without consequences. But I was done being the victim. I was done being the one who took the back seat. I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going to let Matt and Lily win. I wasn't going to let them tear my family apart. The next day, I sat down and started making plans. I contacted my lawyer again, this time to make sure I had everything in place to protect myself. I began working on a strategy to rebuild my life, to make sure I came out stronger. And most importantly, I started focusing on what I could control, my future. I wasn't going to let them take everything from me. I would rebuild, and I would make sure that I never allowed someone to betray me like this again. The days after my meeting with Lily felt like a blur. I had confronted her, I had heard her apology, but nothing had changed. The betrayal still stung, and nothing would ever be the same again. The worst part was knowing that even if Lily had confessed, even if she had shed tears of regret, the damage had already been done. The trust we once shared had been broken, shattered into 1,000 pieces, and there was no way to put it back together. But I wasn't going to let it end there. I wasn't going to sit by and allow Lily and Matt to destroy my life, my family, my future. No, I was going to take control. It was time to make them realize the price of their actions. And that price was going to be steep. I had already started to put my plan into motion. The first step was making sure my lawyer was ready. I needed to know my rights, to be sure that I was protected when things got ugly. And I knew they would. I wasn't going to just let them walk away unscathed. They needed to understand that betrayal had consequences, and I would make sure they faced those consequences head-on. I spent hours that evening going through old emails, text messages, and records, anything that could serve as leverage. I needed to build a case, something I could use to ensure that Lily and Matt couldn't just take what they wanted without answering for it. And then, I made the call. To Matt. I didn't give him a chance to explain himself this time. I didn't need to hear his excuses. What I needed was for him to face the reality of what he had done. I couldn't keep playing the part of the forgiving wife, the one who turned a blind eye to his lies. No. It was time for him to face me as the woman he had wronged. When he answered, his voice sounded weary, like he knew what was coming. Emma, I know you're upset, but please, let's talk about this. Talk about it? I replied, my voice icy. What's there to talk about, Matt? You slept with my sister. You betrayed me in the worst possible way. And now you want to talk? I didn't mean for it to happen, he said, his voice faltering. I was confused. I made a mistake. A mistake? I repeated, my anger building. This wasn't a mistake, Matt. You knew exactly what you were doing. And now you're trying to minimize it? You destroyed our family, you destroyed me, and you think a mistake is going to make it all okay? I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice filled with regret. I never meant to hurt you. Please, just give me a chance to make things right. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. You don't get a chance to make things right, Matt. Not anymore. There was silence on the other end, and I could feel the weight of the words between us. I had made my decision, and there was no going back. You've lost me, Matt, I said, my voice steady now, the fury giving way to finality. And I'm not going to let you destroy everything I've worked for. You and Lily can live with the consequences of your actions. But don't expect me to forgive you. I hung up before he could respond, feeling the weight of that moment sink in. This was it. The line had been drawn. I had taken control of my own future, and I wasn't going to let them keep tearing it apart. The next day, I called Lily. It was time to have one last conversation with her. A conversation where the truth would come out, and where there would be no more pretending. No more apologies. She had crossed a line, and it was time for her to face the consequences of her betrayal. When she answered, I could hear the hesitation in her voice. Emma, I don't know what else to say. I already apologized. I never meant to hurt you. I know, I said, cutting her off. And you've apologized 1,000 times, but that's not enough. It's never going to be enough. There was a long pause, and I could feel the tension building. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice almost pleading. I want you to understand what you've done, I replied, my voice cold. You didn't just betray me, Lily. You betrayed us. You ruined everything we had. You took my husband, you took my trust, and you shattered it. And now, I'm going to make sure you pay the price. She gasped, the shock in her voice clear. What do you mean? I mean that I'm not going to let you get away with it. I've already made arrangements. I've contacted the lawyer, and I'm starting to build my case. I'm not going to let you walk away from this without facing the consequences. I could hear her breathing heavily, her panic rising. You're going to destroy everything, Emma. Please don't do this. But it was too late. The words were out, and there was no turning back. You did this to yourself, Lily. You're the one who chose to betray me. You're the one who destroyed our family. And now, you're going to live with the consequences. I ended the call, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over me. It was done. I had made my decision, and there was no going back. Lily and Matt had chosen their path, and now they would face the consequences of their actions. As I walked through the house that evening, I knew that the next few weeks would be filled with difficult decisions. There was no way to undo the damage that had been done. My family was broken, and there was no going back to the way things were. But I also knew that I couldn't let the betrayal define me. I had to rebuild, for me, for Amelia, and for the life I had fought so hard to create. But there was one thing I was certain of: Lily and Matt wouldn't get away with this. They had destroyed something beautiful, something real. And I would make sure they understood that betrayal had a price. The weeks after I confronted Matt and Lily felt like an emotional roller coaster. Every day was a mixture of cold determination and deep pain. I had taken control of my life again, but the aftermath of everything, the lies, the betrayal, still loomed over me like a dark cloud. The changes had already started to take shape. My lawyer had been working on the legal side of things, ensuring that my rights were protected, that I was going to walk away with what was mine. The house, the financial assets, everything that Matt and I had built together, none of it would slip through my fingers because of his mistake. But it wasn't just about the material things. The deeper pain was the damage to my family. My sister, the person who had once been my best friend, had torn apart something sacred. And the question lingered in my mind: could I ever rebuild what we had? Could I ever forgive her for what she had done? The first real confrontation with Matt came a week after I had told him to leave. We had been living in the same house for weeks without talking, just moving around each other like strangers. I could feel the walls closing in on me, and I knew it wasn't healthy to continue avoiding the inevitable. I had called him to meet me at a cafe, somewhere public, somewhere neutral. I didn't want another scene in our home. When he walked in, his expression was unreadable. The man I once loved seemed like a ghost, haunted by his own actions. The once charming, confident man had been replaced with someone smaller, weaker. The guilt was written all over his face. "Emma," he said, his voice quiet, like he was treading carefully. "I don't know what else to say. I've hurt you. I've destroyed everything." I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence linger, the weight of his words sinking in. How could he say this now? After everything he had done, after all the lies? "I don't need your apologies anymore, Matt," I said, my voice steady. "What I need is for you to leave. I need you to move out. I need a clean break." "I've been thinking about what you said," he continued, his eyes meeting mine with the faintest trace of hope. "Maybe I'm not the man you thought I was. But I don't want to lose you, Emma. I don't want to lose our family." "You already did," I said softly, though my words were sharper than I intended. "You made your choice, Matt. And now I have to make mine." He looked down, his face filled with regret. "I'll leave. I'll go. But I need you to know that I'm sorry." I nodded, my heart heavy, but resolute. "Goodbye, Matt." The next step was Lily. She had tried to reach out to me, but I couldn't bring myself to answer her calls or texts. How could I face her again after what she had done? How could I look at her knowing that she had betrayed me with my husband, the man I had shared everything with? But as much as I wanted to avoid her, I knew that this was something I couldn't run from. We had to talk. She had to understand the gravity of her actions. And I had to make sure that she knew that what she had done to me was unforgivable. I called her that evening, my hand shaking as I pressed the dial button. She picked up almost immediately, her voice tentative. "Emma, I've been trying to reach you," she said, the worry in her voice evident. "I'm so sorry for what I've done. Please, can we talk?" I took a deep breath before replying, trying to keep my emotions in check. "We need to talk, Lily. I've given you time, but now it's time for you to face what you've done." There was a pause, and I could hear her breathing on the other end, as if she was bracing herself for something. "I know," she whispered. "I've been so selfish. I never wanted to hurt you." I was confused, but that doesn't excuse what I've done. I don't know how to make it right. "I don't know if you can," I said, my voice steady. "You've destroyed everything. You've torn apart my family, my marriage. And I can't just forget that. I never meant for it to happen like this," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought it was just a mistake, something that could be fixed. But now I see the damage I've caused. I wish I could take it all back, Emma. I really do." I sat in silence for a moment, letting her words wash over me. But no apology could undo what she had done. I had lost not just my husband, but my sister. The woman who had always been there for me was now a stranger, someone I couldn't trust, someone I couldn't forgive. I need space, Lily, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I need to heal, and I can't do that with you in my life. Not anymore. There was a long pause, and I could hear the sobs on the other end of the line. I'm so sorry, she said again, but this time I didn't respond. I hung up the phone, knowing that this was the last time I would speak to her for a long time. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. I moved out of the house Matt and I had shared, taking Amelia with me. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I needed to start over, to rebuild my life from the ground up. I wasn't just rebuilding my family, I was rebuilding myself. I focused on my career, on getting back to the person I had been before everything had fallen apart. I reached out to old friends, colleagues, and clients, reminding myself that I was still capable, still strong. The woman who had built a life from nothing wasn't gone, she was just buried beneath the rubble of betrayal. But I wasn't going to stay buried. I started looking into new housing, new opportunities, and new beginnings. I knew that my life had to go on, even if it was without Matt and Lily. And slowly, I began to find peace. Not just with the idea of moving on, but with the realization that I had the power to shape my own future. I didn't need them. I could rebuild, and I would rebuild.